Okay, we're back for quiz night 77. Right, some scores from last week. We had Jerry on me at 23, with Josie and Billy me at 27, Billy Gray in me at 29, Gene and Davey on me at 28, John and Dawn on me at 36, and Stevie and Rita with a 40. Right, we're coming to you live from Newcastle there, so you might see a seagull in the window, and that's don't be worrying. Right. Trying to make them slightly harder than last week because the scores are getting a wee bit too high, so we'll try and get them down a wee bit. Here we go with number one. What was the name of Popeye's baby? What was the name of Popeye's baby? Number two. What was the name of Scarlett O'Hara's plantation home in Gone with the Wind? Number three, with over 30 billion, which country has the world's richest monarchy? With over 30 billion, which country has the world's richest monarchy? Number four, which Canadian singer died in 2002, had a hit with Indiana Wants Me and There's a Ghost in My House? Number five, what sort of a weather phenomenon is a Fata Morgana? What sort of weather phenomenon is a Fata Morgana? I think it's named after the witch in King Arthur, Morgan Le Fay. It's something to do with her, named after her. Number six, Admiral, you need to write this one down if you have a pen. Admiral dances Wham. Okay, Admiral dances Wham. That's WHAM. As an anagram of what item we found out in the summer of September 2022 was handy to keep for emergencies. Number seven, the Vatican declared which clothing sinful when it was introduced in 1946? Right, here's one for you. If I got a pen, write this down, these names. I'm going to give you five names, and I want you to tell me what the odd one out is. We've got John, Richard, James, Henry, George. So what's the odd one out of them names? So it's John, Henry, Richard, James, and George. Okay, get their answers down, a bit of paper, and I'll give you the answers. Who's that?
They're there. They are right there too.
The birds are back.
You getting another one?
No, I'm getting it.
You should have said it was Steve Donald.
Yes, we're in from live from a sleeve Donald. Number, here's the answers. What was the name of Popeye's baby? It was Sweet Pea. And what was the name of Scarlett O'Hara's plantation home in Gone with the Wind? Tara. And with over 30 billion, which country has the world's richest monarchy? It's Thailand. Canadian singer who died in 2002 had a hit with Indiana Wants Me and There's a Ghost in My House. Ardeen Taylor. Hope I've got that date right. 2002. And what sort of weather phenomenon is a Fata Morgana? It's a mirage. And Admiral dances Wham is an anagram of what item that we found out that summer of September 2022 was handy to keep for emergencies? Marmalade sandwiches. Remember the marmalade and the Queen took one out of her handbag? Admiral dances Wham. Okay, the Vatican declared which clothing sinful when it was introduced in 1946? Bikini. And which is one of these is the odd one out. We had John, Richard, James, Henry, and George. It was Henry, because the other four are the Beatles. We had George Harrison, John Lennon, and James is the first. Paul McCartney's called James. Paul's actually his second name, so it's James Paul McCartney, and Richard is Ringo Starr, Richard Starr. So they're all Beatles except for Henry. That was a good one. Most people would have been thinking Kings. Right. Write our scores down. We're going to go on to round 2. When did the Queen make her first televised speech? Giving you 1 year other way.
55.
Number 2. Who in the Bible walked on water before becoming afraid and sinking? Number 3. Who commanded the ship Queen Anne's Revenge?
That's 3.
Okay. Who commanded the ship Queen Anne's Revenge? Number 4. Which World War II battle occurred south of Istanbul in Turkey? Okay. Which World War II battle occurred south of Istanbul in Turkey? Here's a quote from a famous film. I'm sure everybody's seen it. Get busy living or get busy dying is a quote from which movie?
Some good ones.
Here's a wee sport one. India's national cricket kit is mostly what colour? And here's a wee tough one. What was Walt Disney's first non-animated film? Okay, so what was Walt Disney's first non-animated film? And here's one. I think Billy Stewart saw something like this before. I'm going in. There were 5 films that won Best Picture Oscar that had an animal in their title. If you give me 2 of them for a point. Okay, that's round 2 over. So you want to pause that and go back on some of them. I'm going to give you the answers. When did the Queen make her first televised speech? You got 1 year other way. It was 57. So if you had 56, 57 or 58, you can give yourselves a point.
55.
And who in the Bible walked on water before becoming afraid and sinking? Peter.
Yeah.
And who commanded the ship Queen Anne's Revenge?
That's,
Was Edward Teach, Blackbeard the pirate. And which World War II battle occurred south of Istanbul in Turkey? Gallipoli. And get busy living or get busy dying is a quote from which movie? The Shawshank Redemption. I think I've seen it about 3 times, good movie. And India's national cricket kit is mostly what colour? Blue. And what was Walt Disney's first non-animated film? It came out in 1950. It was Treasure Island. And there were 5 films that won Best Picture Oscar that had an animal in their title. And you had 2 to get me 2 for a point. You had The Silence of the Lambs, Birdman, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Dances with Wolves, and The Deer Hunter. So if you have any 2 of them, give yourselves a point. Get them scores down. Moving on to round 3. How is the boxer Eric Esch better known? Eric Esch. Here's number 2, Norway, tricky one. What's the connection with the USS Arizona and the USS Oklahoma? They're 2 ships, but what's the connection between them? Here's a wee maths one for you, as I heard last week. I think wee Laura got it. No, we were in a wee quiz last week. What mathematical symbol can go between 2 and 3 to make it bigger than 2 but smaller than 3? Okay, so if you put a 2 and a 3 down, and what mathematical symbol can you go between 2 and 3 to make it bigger than 2 but smaller than 3? Now here's a tough one. I haven't heard this one. What was the name of a flagship that led the English Navy during the defeat of the Spanish Armada? And number 5, which actor did Frank Sinatra nickname Mr. Mumbles? And number 6, how was the dictator Francois Duvalier better known? And number 7, in which country would you find the Dalmatian coast? And what is the number 8, what is the longest living breed of dog? Okay, get them answers down. Okay, here's the answers. How is a boxer, heavyweight boxer Eric Esch better known? I think he's done a bit of MMA too, and I think I read somewhere a bit of wrestling, but he's mostly known as a boxer. Butterbean. He was Butterbean. When they didn't announce him as Eric Esch, they announced him as Butterbean. One of the few people that gets their nicknames other than their real name when they're fighting. Butterbean. Big fat belly and a baldy head. He looked like a butterbean, his head. Number 2, what's the connection with the USS Arizona and the USS Oklahoma? They were both sunk in the Battle of Pearl Harbor. What mathematical symbol can go between 2 and 3 to make it bigger than 2 but smaller than 3? Point. 2.3 is bigger than 2, but it's smaller than 3. Point. It's a decimal point. And what was the name of a flagship that led the English Navy during the defeat of the Spanish Armada? The Ark Royal. And which actor did Frank Sinatra nickname Mr. Mumbles? Marlon Brando. And how was dictator Francois Duvalier better known as? Papa Doc. And in which country would you find the Dalmatian coast? Croatia. And what's the longest living breed of dog? Chihuahua. Okay, answers down. Going to move on to round 4. This is Blockbusters round, okay? So I'll give you the initial of the answer and you have to tell me what it is, okay? What B was the capital of West Germany? And which A has a beer name? Is a river which runs through Amsterdam? And number 3, what A is the national airline of Russia? And number 4, which MM was a British music magazine that ended in the year 2000? What AOHF was an 1884 book by Mark Twain? AOHF. And number 6, which LK is the most successful British female athlete in Olympic history? Now here's a tough one. I didn't hear this. I just came across this. Which T was the code name for the first atomic bomb ever detonated? Okay, so which T was the code name for the first atomic bomb ever detonated? And number 8, what HIMH was the only single to reach number 1 in 1952? Okay, what HIMH was the only single to reach number 1 in 1952? Okay, get your answers down. We'll give you the answers out in a second before we move on to the final round. What B was the capital of West Germany? Bonn. And which A, which has a beer name, is a river which runs through Amsterdam? It's the Amstel. And what A is a national airline of Russia? Aeroflot. And what MM was a British music magazine that ended in the year 2000? Melody Maker. And what AOHF was an 1884 book by Mark Twain? Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. And what LK is the most successful British female athlete in Olympic history? Laura Kenny. And number 7, what T was the code name for the first atomic bomb ever detonated? Trinity.
That's it.
And what HIMH was the only single to reach number 1 in 1952? It's because it was the first chart was released on November the 20th, and it stayed at number 1 for 9 weeks, but sprung it into 1953. So it was Here in My Heart by Al Martino. Before we move on to round 3, give you a wee view out the window. There's a Mourns, there's a seagull, and there's a sea. We couple of days in Newcastle. Okay, here we go for the last round. Last round. A couple of tough ones here, but a couple of good ones. Number 1. The poem that starts with "In a mean abode on the Shankill Road" is from which Robin Williams film? Okay, the poem that starts with "In a mean abode on the Shankill Road" is from which Robin Williams film? It was wrote by a guy called Raymond Calvert from Helens Bay. I think he went to Queen's University or something. He taught there maybe or something. Said. Number 2. In the poem "The Green Eye of the Little Yellow God," what's the name of the male main character? Okay. In the poem "The Green Eye of the Little Yellow God," what's the name of the male main character? Number 3. Which poet wrote about a host of golden daffodils? And number 4. Which poet wrote "Ode to a Nightingale"? And number 5. Which poem starts "We sleekit Curran timorous beastie"?
That's Robbie Burns.
And number 6. Which poem has the line "Into the valley of death rode the 600"? And number 7. I remember we got this in school. What did you call him? Was that our straight? Mr. Straight or Blair? Aye, Trevor Blair or Bertie Straight. It was one of these things. But I remember this poem because we had to learn this for weeks and weeks. Which poem ends with the words "Yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son"? That's the ending. But what's the name of the poem? It's very famous. And here's another one. It's from a film. I remember seeing it years ago. I think it's a black and white one. It's good. It's a good story. We saw it film. Which 1958 film has a poem which ends, "For the peace of my years and the long green grass will be yours and yours and yours"? It's a true story. It's a great film. If you haven't seen it, recommend it. Alright, get the answers down. Here we go. Which poem starts with "In a mean abode on the Shankill Road" is from which Robin Williams film? It's a Dead Poets Society.
Yes.
Robin Williams, and it's about him and his wife. He wanted to kill his wife and he cut her throat, and then he tried to hang himself, but he didn't really mean to hang himself or something. Is that what it was? But the razor blade was German made and the rope, the sheet was Irish linen. That was we call it the Ballad of William Bloat, I think you call the poem. Number 2. In the poem "The Green Eye of the Little Yellow God," what's the name of the main character? It's Mad Carew. And which poet wrote about a host of golden daffodils? William Wordsworth. And number 4. Which poet wrote "Ode to a Nightingale"? John Keats. Number 5. Which poem starts "We sleekit Curran timorous beastie"? You call it "To a Mouse." That's by Robbie Burns. And which poem has a line "Into the valley of death rode the 600"? That's "The Charge of a Light Brigade" by Alfred Lord Tennyson. And which poem ends with the words "Yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son"? It's "If" by Rudyard Kipling. If. That one, if you can keep your head when all about you is losing yours and blame it on you. It's "If" by Rudyard Kipling. And 1958 film has a poem which ends, "For the peace of my years and the long green grass will be yours and yours and yours." It's from the film "Carve Her Name with Pride." I think it's Virginia. Is it Virginia McKenna? Maybe it's Virginia McKenna. It's about the girl Violet Szabo, who's a British French spy during the Second World War, and she was shot by the Germans, or hung by the shot, I think, by the Germans when she was caught for spying. True story. Right, get them scores down and give me the answers in the usual ways by WhatsApp, text, tell me, or YouTube, and let me know. Okay, see you all soon.